By the way, I have to note this. The Last Dance was that Michael Jordan documentary. It had massive numbers. It beat all but a couple of NBA games this year. And the only games that it didn't beat were the Christmas Day games when we're all sitting home. But again, what I think it really illustrates, what I think Sunday really illustrates, because the rating would have been big. Obviously, Christmas NBA games get bigger ratings because we're all home. And obviously, we're all home for this, so it gets a big rating. But it really does illustrate the lasting power of Michael Jordan. I would say brands are the opposite of perfume. You can always tell a really, really cheap perfume because if a woman's wearing a cheap perfume and she walks by you and you can smell it and she leaves and you can still smell it 4 and 5 seconds later, that's a really cheap, tacky perfume. Brands, it's the opposite. The longer you can sense them, the longer you feel you can taste them and smell them, the better they are. Here is how great Michael Jordan's brand is. He has the greatest brand in the history of American sports. So last year's shoe sales in the NBA, just consider this. LeBron shoe sales, KD's, Steph's, Kobe, Harden, Kyrie, and Damian Lillard combined sold 129 million shoes. Michael Jordan sold 130 million by himself. He is our Babe Ruth. Babe Ruth died in 1948. Stopped playing far before that. And Major League Baseball a few years ago added an asterisk to the home run total to protect Babe Ruth. Babe Ruth had a brand before there were brands. He was the first pre-brand brand. And there have been other great brands, nothing close to Michael. And there's an old saying, and I've heard this for years and years. Oh, everybody's replaceable. In my business, everybody's replaceable. No, they're not. Howard Stern wasn't replaceable. Howard Stern left FM radio, and the industry died. It died. It just died. Nobody listens to FM. It just doesn't do very well, right? Steve Jobs left Apple. They had to go get Steve Jobs again because he was not replaceable. Muhammad Ali, boxing has never had in the heavyweight division somebody that good-looking, that great, that socially impactful, that polarizing, and that glamorous. They've never replaced him. They have never replaced him. I don't believe there'll ever be a Tiger Woods on the tour. And the NBA to this day, all those shoe numbers, Kobe's and Harden's and Steph's and LeBron and KD, Michael's been retired for 20 years. I mean, here's the power of Michael. When they talk about when your brain protects you from bad memories as a child. It's like a protective mechanism in our brain. Michael Jordan affects our brain. We protect his legacy. We didn't just watch him. We loved him. And it protects us. It's as if the Washington Wizards years don't exist. He was still in his 30s. He could not lead a team to the playoffs. Half the league at that point got into the playoffs. He couldn't get into the playoffs. He never looked in great shape. He was goosing his stats to average 20 a game the last year. It's like it didn't exist. Everybody says, oh, Michael took 2 years off to play baseball. No, he didn't. He took 1 year off. And then he came back and got eliminated in the Eastern semis by Orlando. That literally doesn't exist. It's just disappeared into like a smokestack. You see it for a second, and smoke goes, and it just disappears into the ether. That's the power of Michael Jordan. He was irreplaceable. Never forget, LeBron is making a movie now. It's a sequel to a Michael Jordan movie. Never forget that Derek Jeter was the first or second most popular player in baseball. He wore Jordan's gear. The top 5 or 6 college programs, football programs in America, many of them wear the Jordan brand. He was a basketball player. But maybe most of all is the saying that Michael Jordan created. Michael Jordan was so great at basketball that there became a term used in America. If you were really great at baking, oh, you're the Michael Jordan of baking. You became the Michael Jordan of landscapers. This guy is the Michael Jordan of magicians. That term, for a long time, existed. And you saw it Sunday night in the documentary. Just don't. Everybody feels better about themselves when you say everybody's replaceable. It makes us all feel better, right? We're all human. You haven't separated too much from me. No, there are people that are irreplaceable. The NBA has still never replaced Michael Jordan. So Draymond Green came out yesterday, and he was talking about, when people would ask Draymond about his contract, he's like, I'm a warrior for the rest of my life. Klay Thompson would say, I'm all in. I'm a warrior. Steph Curry. But he was criticizing Kevin Durant because he was always kind of waffling about it. And, let's be honest about KD. KD left Draymond Green because they had kind of a passive-aggressive relationship at the end. They didn't really confront each other. Kevin was letting us all sort of stew on it, and what is he going to do? And compare that to the alpha male that is Michael Jordan, who met all his obstacles head on. He confronted teammates. He confronted the GM. He confronted Steve Kerr and punched him. He confronted every issue he had. He went right in. He confronted the Pistons. He fought with the Celtics. KD runs. He's passive-aggressive. He does not confront. And when you have a documentary with 6 million viewers, and it's led and about a man's man and an alpha male, I know you guys all want to be evolved and a modern man and sensitive, but you put a sensitive guy next to a man's man, and even the girlfriend or wife would admit, yeah, the other guy's kind of hot. He's kind of a man's man. He kind of, confronts crap instead of being nice and evolved and modern and being bummed out about a Twitter account. And so Draymond Green, basically, when he ripped Kevin Durant, is just saying he never confronted us. He never was straight with us.
What should have happened was Kevin come out and say, hey, man, this is it. So let's do this, or this isn't it. You know what I'm saying? But you can't just leave the elephant in the room, because what happened was the question came to us every day. Every time we spoke to the media, Klay and myself was asked about our contract. And it was strictly due to Kevin.
So Kevin, by not just coming out and saying something, and I think this is one of the things I like about KD, is, he's a listener. I think he can be really sensitive, and the downside to being sensitive. When I watch The Last Dance, obviously Jerry Krause looks bad. But it does make some of these modern stars, load management, passive-aggressive, it does make them look soft. I mean, Michael Jordan had real obstacles. Let's just talk about his NBA life. Let's not talk about their lives, their NBA lives. Michael he took a physical beating. The game was much more physical in terms of hand check. There was virtual tackling. He took a physical beating. He went to an organization so poor, the indoor soccer team in Chicago was more popular. The roster he inherited had coke heads all over it. You heard that story. He had a GM often not conspiring against him, but a difficult GM. He had a revolving door of coaches. He had ball hog teammates. Kevin Durant came into the NBA to the Sonics. Generally well run, although they were bad the year he entered the league. And then by year 2, he has Westbrook. And year 3, he's got James Harden. And Oklahoma City sold every ticket to every game. And they found a coach really early in Billy Donovan. And even the coach they fired was pretty good. And it's a fairly charmed NBA life. I am not saying KD's childhood was ideal or Michael's. They weren't. But in terms of it, if you look at what Michael Jordan had to deal with, and you watched it in the first 2 episodes, a lot of obstacles. And he met all of them head on. He'd scream at a teammate. He'd get after a GM. He would get after the Pistons. He would confront them. He was a man's man. He's an alpha. He had a strong dad. He's a strong guy. His dad was a man's man. He confronts stuff. And by the way, when you do that, you offend people. You alienate people, weaker people. KD is more sensitive. He's not really the man's man alpha thing. He's a little passive aggressive. He's a little bit more sensitive. And, we were talking as a team this morning. If Michael and Kevin Durant ever played together, You know who would lead that team. Michael would chew him up. Because and again, I'm not saying you don't want to be an evolved man, and I understand you want to have feelings, but when you put the man's man next to the sensitive guy, I think Michael's documentary, I watch it, and it does. It makes load management guy in the NBA look kind of pathetic. Right? A little bit? Like, dude, load management? Michael flew commercial. You fly private. I mean, Michael broke his foot year or two. That's another obstacle he dealt with. So, we're all going to beat up on the late Jerry Krause, who, did make some good moves. I mean, the Cartwright move was a good move. Medical bill, nobody wanted him. He rolled the dice. He worked. Traded for Scottie Pippen. I mean, Krause made some good moves. He should. He's a GM. That's his job. Michael made a lot of shots, and Scottie made a lot of shots. Jerry Krause should make some good moves. But I do think when I watch it, one of my takeaways was the modern player doesn't really face as an NBA player. I'm not talking about childhood. Their NBA lives are much more charmed. I mean, I always think about sports talk radio guys. I'm so lucky. The guys that did this in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, they didn't have like the internet. They didn't have Google. They didn't have the search engines. A lot of them, cable TV wasn't nearly what it is in the 80s and early 90s. I mean, I come in, I got a team of guys. I can look up anything. I can Google stuff. I got a million different podcasts I can binge on and get information from. It is so much easier to do what I do today than with the first guys that did this in the 80s in New York and Philadelphia. And I mean, they must have had to watch every inning of every baseball game to have shows. I mean, I get highlight packages. This is a breeze compared to 25 years ago.